Okay, let's try this again. This video is obviously going to be about Saturn. Saturn and I have a difficult relationship. So, if you're wondering, why does she talk so slowly? Why does she always look like she's thinking really hard? What is she trying to say? Why is this taking so long? Why is she stumbling on her words? It's because of my Saturn placement. So what we're going to talk about is Saturn in the third house. First, we have to understand what the third house means. So, know that the third house it's the natural ruler of the third house is Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Okay, so Mercury represents communication, intelligence, the way that one communicates, all things written, spoken word. So since Gemini is the natural ruler of the third house, any sign that comes into this house, any planet that comes into this house, the backbone of it will be the meaning of the third house, which represents how one communicates in the world. It represents the way that the mind transforms thought into this reality. It's governed by media, by communication, by writing, by any form of writing. That can be music, that can be language, that can be art, it can be any form of expression, social media, maybe computer programming, any programming language. Just seeing two people talking to each other, communicating with animals, any form of communication, even body language. There's still an element to communication, right? So if we're talking about bringing a planet Saturn, so the planet Saturn has a really massive importance on the karma that we have to face in our lives. So if you have the karma of planet Saturn in your house of communication, that will be a major house, a major planet to follow in your life. It will end up being the house that things bloom in, because you're forced to work so hard over and over, so much repetition, so much discipline to get through the weight that Saturn brings. And the nature of this planet is it's just like a duty. It's like paying your bills every month. It's heavy. You have to do it. It's something you cannot escape. You cannot escape Saturn's karma. And the quicker you learn how to use its lesson in life, the better life will become, essentially. So people who have this placement are going to be characterized by slow speech, methodical speech, maybe some sort of speech impediment. They're going to probably be shy or introverted. When they're children, they probably in school won't be the people that will openly communicate. They're not going to be the ones who want to be in the group. They just want to do their own work and be left alone. They want to be left alone because it requires so much focus for them to absorb the information. They're really going to need to be in very quiet spaces, even just to feel like, as adults, to feel like they have collected their thoughts, to understand where they are. It's going to be helpful for them to be in places that are facilitating their learning of themselves. Like, you know, so because they're so shy and introverted, you know, environments that would not be good for them are group settings, team sports. No, please, no. No dodgeball, no flag football, no big parties. I remember being younger and always being at parties and just like feeling so different. Like, I'm not having a good time. This is not a good time. I'm not having a good time. These people need to interact with others one-on-one or in very intimate groups where they feel comfortable with others or they know people. And the type of teaching that needs to come through for them is really supportive. They need, because they're so shy, that's a little bit difficult in this culture. It's not as common, and they really need instructors or mentors or parents or friends who encourage them to say what they're thinking, because this is a sign that can be really underestimated. People they can't quite place them. It's like they seem analytical and aware, like they may be paying attention to a lecture, but they're not going to be the one to raise their hand and give you the answer. They're shy. They could have the highest scores in the class. You wouldn't know that because they're not going to engage in the conversation. They're nervous. That makes them anxious. They get anxiety in big groups. That's just how they are. Like, going to a college with smaller lectures is probably good for them, because it will give them more sense of comfort. And I mean, these people can really have a lot of anxiety around communicating, a lot of anxiety. So they're probably the people who have stage fright, who could be musicians but don't like to perform out loud. Okay, and don't like people to hear them, don't like to live with others, don't like to be heard. They don't want to be heard until later in their life, such as now. So once you recognize that that is your duty, you have to appease the nature of this karma. And to appease the karma and to release its burden and its lesson, to learn its lesson, these people are going to have to develop communication skills that empower them. So vlogging can be really helpful because it gives them an opportunity to talk out loud and to do it over and over and over again, and they're alone. They don't feel this pressure that they would feel in larger groups. Also, they're very analytical people and they're research oriented. So because it's still Gemini, and Gemini rules the intellect, and Gemini is curious naturally. So they like to learn. And they like to learn on their own terms and probably alone. They'll probably work best alone, because in order to really grasp the content that they're working on, they need to be completely focused, because it's going to take longer for them to absorb information. Doesn't mean that they're slow learners. They're not slow learners. They just need the right environment to be able to, especially if it's information that requires just root memorization, then they just have to have the time. So these are the people you're going to see in a very quiet library. They need that quiet space. They need the space to really zone in. But because Saturn's in this house, these are the people who will be really shy when they're younger, and as they grow older, they'll have this opening that happens. They'll slowly start to feel more confident about what they think, what they know. They might want to teach. They might want to just share their experience like I am now, because that's an indication that the karma of this planet is starting to release. And I've read a number of things, but they generally say between, after your Saturn return, obviously, like 27 to 30-ish, and maybe between 35. So maybe between 27 and 35, these are big years for really understanding the self in a deeper way. And then it's almost like you're better able to situate yourself in this culture, in this reality, essentially. So let's talk about forms of communication that will be helpful for them. Writing things down. Definitely write things down, because it gives them the ability. They can't understand what they're thinking about unless they have it down, or unless they actually vocalize what they mean. So if they're having to learn about something new, it might be really beneficial for them to pretend like they're teaching and speak out loud, because it's going to force them to externalize what is continuously internal. That way they'll have a better concept, and that will also develop the confidence that is innately low. They're born with they don't have the support of this house to begin. So that is definitely important. Singing could be an outlet for them if they have an environment that lets them feel comfortable enough to sing. That's probably definitely helpful. Any type of music is a form of communication, and it requires method, it requires discipline, it's very analytical, it requires repetition. These are all factors that Saturn requires the native to pursue. Art, the expression of art, any sort of art. It does not matter if it's, traditionally taught. With the hand is probably important. I don't know why I say that, but I say that. So, just different methods of any sort of painting, drawing. Probably, again, something with words even, or you might find that in their work, if they're artists, they might have like text in their work. I haven't thought about that before, but that's relevant. And there's someone who, if they do produce work, they probably produce a lot of it, because again, they get this fulfillment by doing things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So even in their work, whatever they do for work, it's going to be something that's repetitive. They're going to have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. And it's probably related to their throat and their hands, but that's another video. So all media, working in media, understanding that this is the purpose of their life, essentially. This is the purpose of their life. Anyone with this placement will benefit from going towards the pursuit of all things that are representative of Mercury, of Gemini, of the third house, and of course with Saturn in mind. So they could become great teachers, they could become great writers, they could become, media makers, they could work in film, in television, in script writing, in maybe as language teachers, or, depending on a lot of other placements, just anything that requires research and detail and repetition. They have a calculative nature in a way, and that just comes at least in relationship to text. So even they might be people who read a lot, or they prefer to read or listen to something than talk. Like they're just talking is probably exhausting for them, or they just feel like, why do I need to really talk about this? Like they already understand it. They're already, in their minds, they are participating in the conversation. They just, a lot of times will have a lot of things to say, but they don't really know exactly what to say because they want to cater it so specifically to their audience that it like stifles them, So they will have a delay in speech. You'll see this, cadence in their speech, as you probably see with me, like very slow, shy, introverted. They don't want to have any kind of small talk. They do not like small talk. It's just meaningless for them. They just don't even want to talk to begin. So, being in peace and quiet, being outside, or working in environments that let them work alone in their own space, that is where they will really do their best work. And realize that even if someone is unaware that this is a placement that they have, their life will inevitably become this. This is who they will become. It is their fate, essentially. It is the natural desire of this planet. So, if you're just now learning that you have this placement, and maybe you're younger, you might not even realize that you have this placement when you're pretty young. You might not understand it yet, but when you get closer to your 30s, you'll start to understand it. And you'll probably start seeking out information in any form. And whatever it is that you're researching during that time will probably be the thing that you end up communicating about eventually. And it doesn't have to be some like grandiose like presentation of information, you know. There are a lot of different forms that this could take, but it will definitely be indicated in your profession in some way. And one thing that I haven't said is that these people will do really well in working with animals because they can communicate with them through body language and they don't have to talk. And that appeases them, it gives them comfort. So if you have this placement, or if your child has this placement, you should definitely have an animal or maybe work around animals, because it will just give you this fulfillment that you don't normally get. Or it could just be an outlet to get fulfillment, and it will boost your confidence. It will boost the aspect of this house. And also, you know, these people, they can be pretty good listeners probably. So they might make great therapists, or if they're not therapy can be one method, but even again, something about music is coming up. So because music is so calculative and it really requires this discipline, even if you're older and you have this placement, it might be beneficial just to like force yourself to take some classes, take a few lessons, and just give yourself 30 minutes a day. It's gonna develop, it's gonna strengthen Saturn, and it's gonna appease its hardship. It's gonna help you to invoke the discipline that it seeks, which will eventually strengthen the way that you communicate with everything. It'll reflect in all areas of your life, right? It will empower the soul, really. So that's good. That's a good place to stop. Okay, thank you.